David Wilson.
David Arlington Wilson.
All right, folks.
We're making a movie.
And action!
David Jedediah Wilson. What a guy.
David Maryland Wilson.
David Henry Wilson.
David Winston Wilson.
David James Wilson.
David James Wilson, David James Wilson, David shut the fuck up.
What is there to say about David Wilson?
What is there?
I know his middle name, but I don't know his middle name.
I thought he was gonna be in your wedding party.
He is going to be.
I think he's always like,
Question.
He'll be like, wow.
He just
We
like
can't
does like,
see
oh,
over the
that's
camera?
perfect.
Oh, yeah, that is a David move. Yeah.
there's David when he starts to talk about somebody that he likes, and he does this. Well, the thing about Chandler, and then 45 minutes later, he finally gets out what he wants to say.
David's a wild man. It's because he's always like,
There's always 105% of David.
I'm sure you remember when, like, on the tryout. I was like, you know, I was the embodiment of jazz hands.
He's one of those storytellers that just kind of, you never know where the point's going.
Both of our spirit animals are otter. Because from a distance, we're cute, and then when you get up close, we're kind of like scrappy.
He'll put on the very first article of clothing that he sees, you know?
David's a really good adventure partner. He's fast and strong and always has a good attitude. And he's down for shit to get weird.
David, like, loves to cook for people and loves to entertain people. And the kitchen is a nightmare anytime David is cooking, but it feels really homey and, like, safe and, like, so cozy because he's so in his element and so excited to be cooking you this pie usually, or, like, chicken pot pie.
David was the first person to reach out to Jeff, Madeline, and I when we first moved to Utah, and really made an effort to include us in the Aspiro community and always asked us to hang out.
He did invite me to stay at his house on my second or third off shift, and that was nice. Began the friendship.
That's where it began.
That's where it began. It began us living together. Not like living together, but like living together.
Has David ever been your wingman?
He's certainly tried. Loves himself some women's jeans. He does pull off the women's jeans. He especially likes the way his butt looks in them. I've seen him a few times getting ready, and he puts on those women's pants and looks at himself in the mirror and looks at that booty. Gives himself a little wink.
Aaron, I have something to tell you, but we have to go outside, and like this like secret. And we went outside, and he was like, you know, like so and so and so and so are like, they're gonna make out. And I was like, they already have. David, you're behind. And then he was kind of bummed out, so we just started dancing in the street. David dances like this.
I was trying to be a pretty good person, and it was your birthday, and I was like, you know what, maybe I'll go and get you a birthday hat and a cake, and I was gonna be really great to you. And I show up, and you were like, oh my god, this is so exciting. So I set everything up, put a birthday hat on you, and then mid happy birthday song, we look over and you are fucking asleep. I was getting transferred out of B3 into VP to help them out because they were going to refocus Diego. I got into the van, and I looked in the back, and David was sitting next to Diego, and David was just like passed out against the side of the van.
think what we know about David now is that he can fall asleep anywhere.
Literally anywhere.
Even next to a like potentially dangerous human being.
Well, we went to a navigation training and he took everyone out to this really cool campsite that almost destroyed my car, but it was worth it. Because it was like right on the lip of this huge canyon in the swell, and it was beautiful and magical.
David would constantly use Taylor Swift songs to get people's attention. The best image I have of David in my head was on a Red Auto Muck 2 trip when there was David. We went through the rapid. I looked back to see David's raft, and everybody is pretty intense, and David's sitting there, one hand on a paddle, drinking a beer, not even looking at the river, going down the rapids. David's got this shit. Oh, one thing I hate about David. This is long fucking stories. I was super drunk on a raft trip once. David told a long story. I passed out. Woke back up. David was still telling the story. I went to bed. I said, this bullshit. I know the ending of the story. Went to bed. David was a significant factor in getting me into whitewatering. Showed me how to make a beer koozie, because having a beer on the river is super important. If anything I can say about David is he always has a little bit of attitude. A little sass on the end there when he's talking about stuff. Oh, I like belligerent, stinky David. Coming off trail, super upset about people aren't taking Goals 1 seriously. And David Wilson in Life, you can make anything fun. Sing enough Taylor Swift and like jiggle your hips a little bit. Yeah. David, I'm extremely sorry that when I put all the beers in the cooler for the initial Red Auto trip, there might have been sand on some of them, which then resulted of about 50% of the beers exploding and or leaking in the cooler. And we were pretty drunk and we were trying to get more beer, and you were like, what the fuck is it? That was me, Dave. I'm pretty sure that was me. And then when you're ready, you just like and you get a fish.
It's hilarious to come back to Aspiro the second time around because David was like a god to people, and I had seen him on his first shift, and it was just comical. Like, he was doing riddles and songs and like making fart games in Kairos, like pissing off the boys. Like a year later, he's like laying it down in the girls group, and like everyone wants to be with David as a guide. It was just like so crazy to come back to. Margaret and I said, you know what, fuck it, David's ready, and we gave David the whole group for like 3 days, and Margaret and I just sat there with he who shall not be named. And we told David he couldn't go too far away because of like ratio. He only had like 4 or 5 kids. But we were like, entertain them, we don't want to hold you guys back, like you're totally in charge, keep your walkie on. So David takes like 2 hours to make a 1/4 mile circle hike in like a St. George Pocoon Springs like wash. And he's like, they're picking up like fossils and like doing some like bogus nature hike. But they were just so damn happy to not be near the kid and me and Margaret. And you could hear David like making up bullshit to them, but like he was just so stoked that we were like, yeah, you can take the group by yourself. They sent David to come be my roamer in St. George, and I was on the end of a Thanksgiving double, and I was like, there's no room in my head right now for anyone to criticize me. David rolls up like all happy and stoked to be like checking out the Infiltrator thing. He totally just like did groups with the boys and like took them off our hands. Like Matt and I were together with them for 2 weeks straight. And David was like totally like read the room obviously and like didn't really give me feedback, but like more of like support. And then he shows up with like a pound of Moe's barbecue in the van. Matt and I just like devoured it.
Okay, when you tell me the first thing, like tell a story, the obvious first thing I say is our week in Boys 1. It was Boys 1 when we were at Rockport in the snow. I had a double ear infection and bronchitis, and and there was like 3 feet of snow on the ground. David, you literally woke up every hour to shovel off snow from sorry. Every hour you woke up, Noodles, it's okay, they're okay. to shovel snow off of our tent. And then the next day I was dying and I accidentally took a NyQuil. And I remember you didn't think something was correct with me, so you called a staff up, and I stumbled to the staff up, and then you took the boys on a hike, and I stayed in the van and accidentally called Luke and said I was high in the van. One of my friends, Liz, was very nervous to get in the water. She had never gone on the river trip, and I kept being like, hey, my friend David's gonna be there, and it's all gonna be okay, okay? And she would always be like, Mo, what happens? And I'm like, David will let you know what to do if that happens, okay? And I just kept being like, there's this guy David, you don't know him, but it's all gonna be okay when we find David. Working with him when he was like, when I was his lead guide, I was like, this man is amazing, you know? And it was just so cool to see him like be open to so much feedback and open to like what other people's thoughts are, and then to see him like just like collect little bits of all of his lead guides and then become this like insanely amazing human and like insanely amazing guide was like so cool. Yeah, now he's so confident.
He's
David's
like
a hot trail man. David, you're hot on trail.
He is.
Sexy.
Very. But also he was just so good with the students. Like I don't know what I expected, but it was like beyond what I expected.
So patient, so kind.
And he was having the students build a dam in the river, and like these like trans students with autism who all hated being there, he had gotten them all stoked about building this dam, and they were soaked. Like they were just in their regular clothes, like all like knee deep in the river, like carrying logs across the river.
Yes.
And like the student who had been on one-to-one for like 8 weeks was even helping. It was
That's
insane. And he was like giving them all
just
these,
gave me
like,
chills.
I was like, oh. I just sat there and watched because I knew I'd cry if I opened my mouth.
Oh.
It was so good. And for him to have that much energy like 2 years later, you know?
Oh my God.
I worked 2 shifts with David, and it was both with G2, and they were both terrible. Caroline was lying about her health, and Grace was sharing food and trying to dive into thorn bushes. I think that the main facet of joy in both of those weeks were David playing the bad lip reading Star Wars song about seagulls. Run, 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 jump. I can be a backpack while you run. Swing from a hairy vine. I can be a backpack while you climb. I actually based at least parts of my guiding style around David from working with him in G2, because he had like so much hype, and I was like very kind of like low-key on trail because I was just always tired or stressed, and so I always like tried to embrace the spirit of David when I was feeling tired. And then also just like his ability to be positive in any situation. It was like, shit's hitting the fan, I'm gonna smile like this. Like, yes. We hit a rapid, we got stuck on a rock, and you were in the other boat and you'd already went through it, and we got stuck on this rock and David got flipped out of the back. And none of us knew what to do. We were all terrified. And I remember like not knowing what to do, but I was kind of in the back of the boat, and I remember I was just like, forward! And we were just like, it's totally like unsynchronized and like trying to get out of it. We were like, David is gone! What do we do? Chaos. Not without our sparkly helmeted beacon of hope. We didn't know what to do. On the river, he has eyes everywhere. He always knows exactly what's going on. Even if a situation is not under control, he is set up to help, like, with the aftermath. He's down to get rowdy and, like, take spicy lines and do things that are, like, over your pay grade, kind of. But then he's gonna be there to, like, collect all of the mess afterwards. He's able to, like, read people's skill level and encourage people. He is a better boater than me, like, by a lot. But he doesn't make me feel that way. I like being on the river with him. He makes me feel competent. Like I'm bringing something to the table. He makes me feel like he wants me there.
Getting to work with him on my first shift was awesome because it like set a tone for how I should want to be like as a guide and like how I should work. And getting to work with him again this summer was even cooler because it kind of like came full circle and nothing was different. He was still like the same like patient and caring and supportive friend, co-guide. He can be annoyed and frustrated and he's still like right there ready to like talk to that student, answer any questions, even if they're like irrational and dumb questions.
Yeah.
Like David's right there showing compassion and trying to figure out how he can like better help the students. And I have a lot of respect for him. David just had a really cool example of like, oh, we just stay calm during these situations. Like this, we just handle them, and this is just how it goes, and it's fine. You know, tomorrow will be better.
Because I started leading on 10 weeks, and he started leading the very week after me, which was like week 8 for him or something.
Oh.
And I was like, who is this guy? Hate him. And I loved seeing how he was still so passionate about adventure. Like, he had convinced them all to take the, like, bushwhack and, like, build a dam in the river and throw rocks around. Like, I think you always, like, you don't have to guess, but with David necessarily, he's always just whoever he wants to be in that moment. But he's also, like, pretty dimensional, so that feels really nice to just be around somebody that I don't necessarily have to worry about, like, being too sad or being too excited or being too weird or whatever. When we first started dating, people always used to tell me how much they love David, and it used to drive me kind of nuts. Like, I get it, he's amazing. But now it's like really nice, like, to have someone that people just instantly like. He's a weirdo.
Yeah.
Straight up weirdo.
Probably the biggest turning point for me in my guiding was like a week I worked with Paul and Megan. It was one of the Diego weeks. Diego's meal just turned out awfully, and he didn't want to eat it, and he didn't want to clean it, and so we were trying to like help him. And he like turned into a shutdown for like a couple hours, and all the rest of the group started getting frustrated with him. So we got a much later start than we had planned, and the rest of the group was frustrated at Diego, and he felt that. He felt this kind of resentment and frustration that the group was sending his way, and he didn't really know how to handle it or how to feel it. He just felt hurt and upset and confused, and I'm sure a lot of other things. And it got to the point where he his only solution in his mind was to end his life. He first tried to like jump off like a cliff, but it was like maybe a 10-foot drop. And then after that we were able to get him back to where like a safe spot, and he tried doing it again, and Paul and Megan had to intervene again and restrain him, and Megan were holding his arms. And then his next choice was to try and bash his head into the rock behind him on the ground that he was sitting in. I had to kind of go up behind him and kind of hold his head so that he wouldn't, hurt himself. And I just remember like at some point in this, hour plus long restraint, just like crying, just like, to witness this progression of like this kid's pain over the course of the day, start with like something that was not his fault.
Yeah.
Like none of that was his fault. To like sit there and like cradle his head as he's like thrashing around, like it was really upsetting. This is not a small thing that we do. Like some days we're like literally fighting to keep kids alive.
I think that story is really important because it was a big kick-starting event in David's career, and it in part made David the incredible guide that he is. That story was an upfront, in-your-face example of how deeply we can impact these people's lives. After everything that we went through during the Diego weeks, our trip to Mexico was kind of bringing that all full circle. It was partially closure for us. Picun Site 3. that's where we were on, I believe, it was the second Diego week. Yeah, well, that's when we decided to go to Mexico, and it was just me and David, and I was like, I'm gonna go to Mexico and take a fucking shit or something like that, or like take a fat shit in Monterrey, Mexico, and David's like, dude, we should actually go there and party, and I was like, that's actually. Well, actually, we should go there and go climb Pico de Orizaba and do it in an off shift. And he was like, fuck yeah, or like both like right then and there, that's when we decided David was like the guy for that trip, because we were just like cruising on the same wavelength. We both brought like our own different things to the team. I'm never going to forget the two of us, just stupid gringos, walking through the streets of Mexico City at 10 o'clock in the morning, like smoking these big fat cigars, looking for tacos al pastor, just like we freaking own the place. When we were training for Orizaba, we had the fastest known time Sugar House to the summit of Boundary Peak in Nevada, and then back to Sugar House in 36 hours. I was like, fuck it, let's just go to sleep and, we'll drive back in the morning. But David was like, no, let's push through. And we cranked some Taylor Swift and drove right through. 36 hours, Sugar House to Sugar House. As far as me and David go as a team, that's just how we roll, doing fastest known times. Yeah, and our second fastest known time, Orizaba in an off shift. But we did have a really good time. We ate a shitload of tacos. Mexico was sick.
He just is always striving to do better, be better. And like seeking knowledge, anything he can get in order to be better, not for himself, but he wants to be better for everyone else around him.
He could break the ice and make people feel comfortable with his like boisterous personality, but then once you were like settled in, he's watching and listening intently enough that he can sense the pain. When he engages in a conversation, he is 100% there. He's like this perfect balance of full-on fun as well as peaceful intentionality.
He's intentional in a way that's not just about what's happening in this interaction. It's like a spider web.
But your guidance of the guides, your guiding of the other guides, more guides lasted longer, or better equipped to handle it as students. And so your real effect isn't, the students that you guided, it's the guides that you guided, because that goes longer, so.
He cares for people a lot.
There's an obvious way to handle things that's not always the right way to handle things. And David doesn't always do the obvious thing. He thinks outside the box. That's really high quality guiding when you can do that. Like, look the obvious thing in the face and understand that maybe, even though that's the obvious and the easiest way, there's something else that might work better, and to go and do that.
Like, you always know that David cares about you. You never wonder, are we friends? Do you care? You know.
I have learned to give everyone the benefit of the doubt.
I think I've learned to be a little more humble. I was a cocky son of a bitch when I started at Aspiro.
Fortune favors the bold is a really great quote for David, because he's bold in those in the moment instinctual responses to things that can either be a positive outcome or a negative one for students. When David is bold, he actively changes the future of himself and others around him for the better.
We would set up our bags next to each other during a meal, and he would just grab his stick of butter and like walk around and help all the girls, try and like get all the girls to eat, and I would cook both of our meals, and then he would come back around and he would have a meal eventually.
One of the really special things that he does is help girl students feel safe around men again. It's pretty incredible what he does out there.
He was just ultimately interested and concerned about what was going on with them, which for teenage girls is a big deal.
Can you just imagine the amount of girls he's probably sat with as they've been like crying on trail, and he just sat with it and just let it be and lets the pain be pain instead of like trying to like fix it or cover it up.
I see those girls more as people that I care about, and I see my friends in them.
David always put a lot of care and compassion and heart into his groups and co-guides, and every day I go out to guide, I want to be a little bit more like David.
David, I love you. You're a great dude. We've had some special moments together. Look forward to the Red Otter Mark III next year. I enjoy the fact that there are other people out there, I think, doing the same thing I'm doing, which is trying to make a world a better place, and sometimes I get to see that. You're definitely one of those people.
David, we love you. We all love you.
David, it's been an honor knowing you at this pivotal time in your life. You've always been there through really crazy hard times in my life, supporting me and making me feel like I had family here and a place that I could be safe and just be myself, and I will always be grateful for that, and I'll always be grateful to you. I'm excited to thinking about all the, over the next like 50 years of us being friends, like all the crazy, stupid, hilarious shit that's gonna happen. I love you, and you're an amazing person, and I'm proud to call you my friend.
David, I would just like to say thank you for being there on my first shift and being just an incredible example for me. It was awesome watching you guide and learning from you, and more so, it's been incredible getting to know you more this summer, and I appreciate the pep talks and the countless amount of times that you've watched me cry. And I just appreciate you so much as a person and respect you and look up to you a lot.
David, thank you for putting in the time and investing so much in me and in your other relationships. You make people feel so valued and warm when they're around you. Man, I appreciate you a lot.
David James Wilson, you are a mighty force, and as Spiro and your friends and the community that you have been a part of creating is so lucky to have you. And I hope that you feel accomplished and that you have like trophies to take away like in your heart from a Spiro.
I love David.
Appreciate you being my friend.
Having people who knew exactly what you were going through, could empathize with you, talk shit with you, drank with you, go out to breakfast after shift with, like friends that you could, create a lifestyle with, I think was a really, really important thing for me.
There's a lot of Davids in the world.
David.
But there's only one David Wilson.
David Chrysanthemum Wilson,
It's
maybe?
chrysanthemum.
Oh.
David Pine Wilson.
David the Rock Wilson.
What's your middle name?
James.
At work, there's nothing sexual about him.
What is the most attractive thing about David?
His personality. Look at that. Fuck yeah, David.
There's gonna be a lot of editing in this.
David still has my nice leather belt that I lent to him for the wedding. Hope I get it back.
Don't remember when I met David. Don't remember his tryout.
You weren't there. Yes! Aaron, you crushed that. You're so good at that.
I gotta check on my peppers.
I didn't think I'd be back behind the camera.
You love it back here.
I have this picture on my phone of you and AJ kissing half naked on the first river trip back in Colorado, and